Right, good evening everyone, can you hear me? Yes, well, thank you, thanks for coming. Oh, fantastic dinner, thank you very much for coming on tonight. My name is Paul Gardner, I'm the chair of the Town Council, so I'm going to chair the meeting tonight and facilitate this discussion. So I've introduced our panel. We've got Mike Johnston here. Mike's the chair of the planning committee on the Town Council. Mike and I will make sure that we put in the Town Council response to the local plan. And obviously we're looking for people's comments tonight, which help inform us to do that in the best possible way. Peter Burton is a district councillor for the South Ward, which is the Cleveland Road side of Western Bigwood, and has, 50 years experience of local planning, and
I've been fighting about that one.
Yeah, he's only 50 times. Yeah. Ian Sutter there is going to talk about sustainability arguments, and we've got Chris Berring, local wildlife expert, who's going to talk about the environment. So the way we're going to do this, the first part of it is going to be an information sharing part, because the local planning is quite technical, and we just wanted to let everyone know what the main arguments, assuming people don't want development around Western Bigwood, what would the main arguments would be. One will be about the green belt and the fact that North Somerset haven't looked at all the alternative sites. The other one will be the precious environment, and the third one will be about sustainability. There's lots of other reasons that you might want to object, which we could put into another bucket. We'll come to that. So we wanted everyone to kind of understand the landscape, the process to an extent, and obviously we would encourage as many people as possible to respond to the consultation, and at the end we'll do next steps, and we'll, as councillors, we'll be obviously open to help people put in the consultation if they're struggling with it, because it is quite technical. I mentioned, sorry, I've got Bob Bull there. Bob's going to talk about how we take the fight to North Somerset, which is a special subject. All right, so we've got some information sharing, then we'll have a general question and answer. If you raise your hand, Nikki and another lady, we have a roving mic, so we'll go around and ask people to speak to the mic, so that everyone can hear, and people on the hearing group can hear in case they've got a question. So I guess we'll have about an hour or so of that, and then at the end we'll do some next. Okay, so other housekeeping, either when you came in or on your seat, there's a piece of paper if you're interested in getting some follow-up information about how to respond to the consultation, the main arguments. Please give us your name and your contact details, and then the Town Council will send out some information to people for follow-up. All right. So also the meeting is being recorded, so it will be available on the Town Council website and the Facebook page tomorrow, hopefully, assuming the technology works. All right, and we've got 2 hours, so we're going to be finishing at 9 o'clock. People want to stay behind and have a private chat, and obviously do that. Okay, that was the introduction. So the first part of it is, you might be wondering why our Tower Farm Blackrock fields surrounding Western Bigwood again under threat development. Mike, do you want to just talk about government policy and the numbers?
I will. Yes, good evening. Okay, a few statistics in relation to where we are at the moment. We're in the middle of the second consultation this year, and this is the one that will go to the inspector. The first one was for North Somerset. The first one was in relation to all the sites around North Somerset, and you probably saw the map covered in orange, yellow and blue designations, and then when that local plan concluded, some of those were removed, and now the local plan was passed a few weeks ago, and so it's now in this second phase of consultation. So the government figures, originally they were about 15,500. The government pushed that up, top down, by about 8,500 to take it to about just under 24,000 dwellings. So The bulk of those have gone into Weston-super-Mare, about 46%, and we've got about 5%. And we feel that there are alternative sites to what the main two that we'll be discussing this evening. So as a consequence of that, I'll just run through some of the figures in relation to the Tower Farm. As you know, it's 400 dwellings, and the proposed Black Rock, and that's both sides of the, both sides of the former nursery there. It's not behaving. It is on. And so that's 100. And then the Wyndham Way, as referred to by North Somerset Council, that's about, it was about 400, but they pushed that up to about 780. And we feel that that could be increased because it's basically a brownfield site. And we'll come to that, discuss that a little bit more in a minute. And there are a couple of other sites that we feel are kind of could be developed, could be appropriate to reduce the overall number if they're looking to get 1,000 or 1,200 into Portishead. And those are the end of the Vale, which has currently got the big board outside for interest. And that's for a commercial building, as I understand, because I think that's what it was always zoned for, one of our projects. Is that correct? I think it's commercial. But there's no particular reason why it couldn't be residential.
I think it was last time for Old People's Home there.
Ah, right, an Old People's Home. I think we've got quite a few of those in Portishead. Bear in mind that Petersfield is still derelict, and that's Churchill, I think. Yeah, Churchill. So there's that site, which is about 38 units, I think. There's the former Slade Road playing field, which North Somerset are quite keen to develop. I think the Town Council has an opposing view to that, or most of the majority of the councillors. And there's a field which lies between the Flower Show field and the Gertisgale allotments. Now, I believe that some years ago this was in fact zoned for potential development.
In the previous plan it was zoned for 80.
For 80. Thank you, Peter. And so, but that's not been taken into consideration in terms of what we're looking at here on this map. Talking of which, the orange zones were put almost linked together in the initial local plan. But that's been removed, the section coming down the hill to Weston Wood Road. And so, yeah, the Wyndham Way area, it's, let's call it the station quarter. There's a potential there for a mixture of commercial, retail, high-rise, because of course Portishead's outside anywhere really in North Somerset, it's got high-rise, which we could utilise more. And so there's a potential there really to take the figure up quite considerably and reduce both these sites in total. So that's really where we're coming from, and the arguments in relation to the inspector and what he or she will be looking for will be brought out in their discussions to follow me.
All right, thank you, Mike. Okay. Yeah, so just to follow on from Mike said, what Mike said, basically, we're now in this stage called the Regulation 19 consultation. Nice, easy name to remember. It's all about site allocations still, okay? So there is no planning application at the moment, all right? What you may have seen are proposals that developers have put in to support their case for developing the particular fields, all right? So the, as Mike said, what will happen is this Regulation 19 consultation phase will end on the 12th of December. All of the comments that you put in, the Town Council puts in, everyone else puts in, will be sent with the local plan draft version to the planning inspector. So there's an independent examiner who will then decide whether the site allocations are sound. And it's quite technical because basically we can challenge it on whether North Somerset's plan is either A, legally compliant, B, sound, as it actually adheres to national planning policy. So unfortunately the current government has changed the planning rules quite considerably to allow greenbelt land to be developed in what's termed exceptional circumstances. So what we need to do is persuade the inspector that there are no exceptional circumstances. Okay. So that's what will happen. There will probably be a planning inquiry, so the inspector will do his examination and experts will be called in to look at the overall plan. So I guess if we're going to be successful in voting off this particular development, we need to make the case that it's not sound. The Town Council has hired the services of a strategic planning consultant to help us put our arguments in the most compelling way and in planning language that the planning inspector will understand, no doubt. So we are doing that as well. So we have to sort of make the best possible arguments to the planning inspector. The planning inspector could decide that the plan's perfect as it is. He could take some sites out. He could reduce sites. He could probably, or he or she could probably put some back in as well. I think that's true. Yeah. So all of those things could happen. It's very rare the planning inspector just doesn't say anything. So there will be some changes, no doubt. Right. And then what happens then? It will go back to North Somerset, and by and large, if the inspector says something, they will generally kind of carry out the instructions, although there may be some dialogue on it. All right, so we are not at the stage of a planning application yet. If it goes to the inspector, there will be potentially a planning inquiry, and various experts will be called, and then at that point, the local plan goes back to North Somerset, and then it will be made in the planning language, which means it then sets the development for all of the places in North Somerset for the next 15 years. So North Somerset have to do this. If they didn't do anything and we had no plan, basically the developer has carte blanche to develop any land that they have in North Somerset. All right, so obviously from a North Somerset planning point of view, it's quite a challenge because they've been given a ridiculous target, frankly, that's never going to be built because the numbers that are in the plan are, I think, probably almost double what have ever been built on an annual basis in North Somerset. So it's kind of nonsense, really. There you go. That's top-down government for you. Sorry. So I guess that's the kind of process. Yeah. So as I said, so I'm just going to talk to one of these, but there are four main arguments. One is they're not considered alternative sites, which Mike started to talk about, whether they be brown or greenfield. Secondly, it's the environmental argument or the ecological argument, which Chris will talk to. Thirdly, sustainability, which Ian will talk to. And as I said, everything else. Right, so that's basically how we suggest people respond, but obviously you can respond with other points as well, of course. If we look at the alternative sites, as well as the ones Mike mentioned, if you look at across North Somerset, I think there are 23 brownfield sites in the local plan. So the only one that had its numbers increased was the one in Portishead, which is kind of Wyndham Way, Elmer Road area. So the other 22, clearly, you could build higher, which means you use less land. And the national planning policy is obviously in favour of brownfield sites. So our argument is they just haven't looked closely enough. We look at Castlewood. If you know the Castlewood site in Cleveland, it's North Somerset offices have been sold. North Somerset still own the land. It's actually got 120 homes for it, but it's a very sustainable area, right in the town centre. If they actually applied the national guidelines for the density of housing for an urban site, you could actually fit 300 to 600 homes on it. So there are plenty of brownfield sites. Mike mentioned a piece of land which is between the Showfield and the allotments in Portishead. Again, that originally had 80 dwellings on it, which have now been removed, but if it came back again, and we would observe that only one person objected to development on that piece of land, you could easily get another 200 or 300, which would mean you wouldn't need to develop Blackrock. So I say these things because you have to, in terms of the process, we have to sort of make planning arguments back to the inspector. All right. So I guess what we're saying is that we don't believe there are exceptional circumstances that exist to justify changes to the greenbelt boundaries, which is a language in the national planning policy. So we will couch our response in that language. And I'm going to look at Chris now because we're going to move over to the ecological arguments, and Chris will give us a little presentation about Western Beewood and the Gordonian Holly.
This is like being in church. Good evening.
Good evening, Vicar. Do you want
Actually,
to
leave that one up. 'Cause, I mean, it's really interesting looking at this map, and I've stared at it for some time. And like most of you here, I've grown up being very much a part of Western Bigwood, and when I look at this, when I look at the potential right up to the woodland edge, it's already described by government as triple SI. It's a site of special scientific interest. I reckon if that went ahead, that's the first thing it would lose. The amount of pressure on the wood would be absolutely phenomenal. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. I've got a stinking cold. How do I do this? Paul? I need to go over to my presentation. Yeah, thank you very much. How do I change the...
so I can just say I'll do it.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a lifetime experience for me. Western Bigwood, I grew up there. It taught me everything I know today, and it itself has an amazing history. If we consider that Western Bigwood as a wood probably dates back to the Iron Age, but there is evidence that the first colonization of trees would have started just after the Ice Age, around about 10,000 years ago. I've got a picture later on I'll show you of a tree which I think is really significant for Western Bigwood, and it's one of the reasons why it's described as very special. And I have this romantic vision of this as the ice and the tundra retreats. This tree, unable to seed itself because the climate has changed so dramatically, actually literally walks across from Europe, across the land bridge, which we now call the English Channel, and it's actually walking across and colonising Britain by having the trees that fall down and then young trees growing from the dead trees. I'll show you a picture of it a little bit later. Let's carry on. So one of the things I think which is really interesting about the wood is its connectivity to the rest of the valley. The valley is very important for a whole host of species. Look, I can't do a complete wildlife talk in 10 minutes about the importance of Western Bigwood. It's impossible, so I'm going to skip quite a lot. But this is a view from Western Bigwood looking out across the valley. And in terms of biology, there's a lot of movement of insects, of plants from the valley towards the wood, rejuvenating the wood, and the wood doing the reverse as well. So the wood actually sending wildlife in the opposite direction. And that corridor is absolutely vital. It's so important. And the buffer zones surrounding the wood therefore become equally important, because it's basically, you can see the woodland edge. If you go to the woodland edge as you're walking around the wood, you can see that it's really quite wild and unique. And then the inside the wood changes slightly, and then when you get to the middle of the wood, it changes again. And it's all of that which makes it really unique for a host of species that actually live there. But if you consider that connectivity, I mean, I'm thinking of a bird such as the shelduck, which goes to Portbury Wharf, and it will actually come to Portbury Wharf around about February. And then what it will do is, when it comes to breeding time, it will actually start moving inland. So there's a bird which actually uses the valley floor, but it can actually breed on the edges of Western Bigwood as well. It'll actually breed in burrows underground or in nest boxes that we put up for other things. And again, we're talking about the connectivity. This picture's actually from the other side of the valley, so you're looking right down through. You can see that amazing corridor of woodland through there. So you're at Walton in Gordey now, looking back towards the estuary, and again emphasising, you know, a lot of the birds which are at Portbury will actually come up through and feed inland. At the moment, you've probably noticed this cold day today, very cold day. Birds that were at Portbury, such as redwings and fieldfares, are now turning over leaves in Western Bigwood in order to feed themselves. So again, that connectivity is so absolutely vital. Again, next one please. And this is Western Ingledeno, so you're at Western Common, so the edge of what I call Western Bigwood and Haxwood. And again, that ribbon of woodland is broken here to some amazing grassland areas here for butterfly species and wildflowers. On again. And it's the flora there which actually helps to designate it as a ancient woodland. So on the extreme left there you've got purple Cromwell. In the middle, this was one of my favourite plants, and this is an industrial byproduct, if you like. And this is from the old Nightingale quarry. This is Century, Greater Century growing here. And it's interesting because we've got a natural history, literally a natural history of Western Bigwood, but we've also got industrial history as well surrounding the wood. And some of these features as well can be very important for wildlife. And of course, Herb Paris, which is a wonderful plant, and again, an absolute classic of the ancient woodlands. Again. It's a whole host of different bird species. I can't go through them all, but just to emphasise, we have obviously the common buzzard, we have things which eat other things. And that's a pretty good indication that the wood's biologically very good. It has a diverse amount of species in it. So that, for instance, these apex predators are able to feed on other things. And again, the next one. So extreme left there, you have the tawny owl, a bird which I've studied intensely in Western Bigwood. And of course, that's feeding on a variety of species as well. And then you've got the classic, the woodpecker, the greater spotted woodpecker. And we have the green woodpecker as well. And classic of the woodland, you'll start to hear them sing in January. They'll start giving their song. That's the nuthatch. And of course, we've got a newcomer, new kid on the block. And the new kid on the block that's bred this year in Western Bigwood is the firecrest. So we've got the goldcrest, and now we've got the firecrest as well. On again. And again, talking about those woodland edges, how important they can be. Extreme left there, you've got the marble white butterfly. It's a butterfly of the grassland areas, and yet you will find it round the edge of the woodland. It's not necessarily penetrating inside, but again, it's that connectivity between those two things. And of course, we have most of the scrub growing towards the edge of the woodland, and that's where you'll find one of my favourite plants, which whenever I do horticultural talks, I hate it. That's bramble. Bramble's absolutely marvellous, and it produces these lovely flowers, and on those flowers, obviously, hundreds of bees and a variety of bee species, which then can go on and pollinate other plants. And right at the edge there, you've got the rose chafer, but not the one from the garden that's on your roses. This is on wild dog rose. Again. And we have got scarce trees in the wood, so nationally scarce trees. And on the extreme left there is a very young, I know where it is, it's a wild service tree. And on my side here, of course, is that tree, which is, for me, is the symbol of Western Bigwood. It's the small-leaf lime. So the small-leaf lime tree is the tree which colonised by literally walking across the landscape. And it's very interesting because if you were in Western Bigwood this year, our climate, you can really see how much the climate is changing, because most of the small leaf limes of the wood actually came into flower and producing real seed, which means the climate has warmed up enough for them to be able to do this. Again? And I talk a lot about wildlife. I spend my entire life talking about wildlife. Western Bigwood is important for people. It's absolutely vital for people. What's the population of Portishead, Paul?
27,000.
How many?
27,000.
27,000. You know, those people have got to have somewhere to go, to relax, to go somewhere where they can be literally surrounded in the spring by the sound of birdsong. Western Bigwood's absolutely excellent. And so are the fields surrounding it. very, very important area. And that's somewhere where you can, you know, for your well-being, for your mental health, for your physical health, because you might be walking. In the future, one of my things that I would really like to see in Weston Bigwood is that it becomes accessible for everybody. So everybody gets the chance to experience what I have been able to experience all of my life. And so on to the next one. This is the last picture. If you click it again, it should play. I'm going to leave you with this one. A family raised in Weston Bigwood in 2025. I hope there will be many more. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Hey, Peter, would you just mind giving the historical context? I think it's quite interesting and quite important. Thank you.
I'd like to follow on from that one with Chris, because he is absolutely passionate about that wood. And when he was a very young lad, he dragged me around Weston Bigwood with a bucket and without any gloves at all. He was picking up batch of shit, washing it out to see what colour plastic was in it, because he had tracked where half the badges in the area moved between the sets where he was feeding them and the latrines where he was finding the plastic. I found it fascinating, but personally I had to take a pair of rubber gloves with me. Now, we are in a real problem here. I thought we'd succeeded and won the battle with Weston Bigwood because it became Greenbelt. It became Greenbelt very late. It's some of the youngest Greenbelt in the county. I know, set up in 1988, but most of the Greenbelt in the county was set out in the 1960s and late 50s. And an awful lot of work had gone into protecting the area. Now, it's not the first time there's been a move to build up to Weston Bigwood on the Valley Road side or on the top. But the County Council decided in their importance that that wood was worthy of protection and its connection to the Gradano Valley was worthy of protection. Hence, they included the whole lot in the Greenbelt. And that was very well done in my view. Now, roughly that time, a survey was carried out and a 2-year project was paid for by the Town Council, the District Council and a load of other people to employ somebody to map the importance of the Gordano Valley and the interrelationship of the land use and the wildlife habitats. I thought that was a relatively new document. I was talking about it about 6 years ago to Bob. When I dragged it out, I realised that was 1980s. So things have changed a little bit. Paul, via the Town Council, employed a consultant to bring quite a lot of that up to date. But the one thing I'm really regretful about now is we don't appear to have the support we had at that time. Because at that time, the Wildlife Trust backed that document, backed it because it was part of their nature reserve with Weston Bigwood, and they really did guide the development in this area. It was because of the Wildlife Trust. There is Greenbelt going right into the forehill of Portishead, right on the top of the hill. There's Greenbelt going in there, and the only reason that happened is because the Wildlife Trust convinced the county that that land was important for wildlife to spread from the wood into the town, into the valley. The only reason you've got a nature reserve between Portishead and Royal Portreeve Dock is because the Wildlife Trust, on the back of that Gordano Valley study, convinced planning inspectors, and that was a difficult one because they were fighting the dock, who wanted to park cars over it all. They managed to convince planning inspectors then that it was important to have a greenbelt wedge going to the sea, as Chris said. Shelducks, the whole dynamics of the area revolves around interconnectivity. And this is where, if we can get it right, this is our saviour. Because when you look at the housing figures we're talking about, none of the district councillors wanted to go into the Greenbelt. And the whole planning system would have allowed all the development North Somerset has to do without going into the Greenbelt, until Rachel from Accounts decides we need an extra 8,000. That's the problem. Now, looking at the list of where they're talking about putting the extra houses, if you take it fairly, it could be argued Portishead's taking a fair share. I think we've got to back that away by saying we have special reasons not to harm our greenbelt. It is relatively new greenbelt, and quoting some of the planning inspector's comments, I was looking through because I'm a sad person, I keep documents going back to the 1980s, and the planning inspectors then pointed out he turned down the suggestion that the Black Rock area should be developed on the grounds it would be too near the wood and damage the vital connectivity to the valley. Now, if we use data like that, we can argue that Portishead is different. If I was in Backwell, I couldn't argue that, because I'm afraid Backwell is surrounded by green fields. And one green field is very much like another. Vital to the people who live there, but I don't believe it has any other strong purpose. Here, I believe we've got a resource that is really worth fighting for and saving. And all right, we've got Chris who's done that bit. The one thing I'm really annoyed about is the total lack of comment from the Avon Wildlife Trust. They were vital in providing this area and protecting this area in the past. The initial consultation that went out in February, I don't know whether you remember, Paul organised a meeting in the village hall to guide people and to assist them in filling in the consultations then. Because when the sites came out and there was, this map's not out there now, the land behind Woodhill, Underwood Road, was being proposed for development then. And that would have connected the downs virtually all the way down. That came out. And I'm pretty sure that came out because of the work everybody did in this town, making sure coherent arguments went into the plan. I mentioned to the Avon Wildlife Trust when they turned up at the Horticultural Society, why didn't they comment on that one? Oh, we didn't think we were asked. So I checked with the District Council. Yes, they were. This time, we've still had no comment. And I really think it's appalling that we've got an organisation that should be fighting for its own corner and doesn't appear to. That's me, we're going to have to do this on our own if that's the case. But I really think we have a sound argument, and if everybody raises the point that it is vital that there is a sensible buffer between Western Bigwood and the Downs. I don't think we can argue they can't put 20 or 50 houses up there, but the 400 is unrealistic, it has to be. And I also think we've got to argue that on the floor of the valley, it is vital that there is a connection from the wood to the floor of the valley through any development. And I don't think the offer of a visitor's centre and a car park at the other end of a nursery is adequate environmental mitigation for that site. So, that's my view. I've had it for 55 years, I'll keep fighting, and I sincerely hope, I'm depressed that we are in this situation, because, bluntly, if the government hadn't increased the figures to totally unrealistic figures, we wouldn't be in this position. And my real dread, as Paul said, we've never developed in North Somerset more than 900 houses a year. We now expect it to go up to 1,500. If we start allowing greenfield sites to be developed, all the brownfield and redeveloped sites just won't happen. It's the only way the Portishead Marina was ever developed on brownfield land was when the District Council were very clear. That is where you build, there will be no greenfield sites. If we allocate greenfield sites, we're lost.
Peter made some really important points there. So the historical argument that what the planning inspector said in 1988 is really powerful. It makes us very different to anywhere else in North Somerset. So I really urge people to talk about that. But you know, because this will be a tough fight. I forgot to say at the beginning, you know, the developers, they love greenfield sites because they make more profit. So the average a large developer makes an average of £63,000 profit on every house they build. So obviously, if there was 400 houses at Tower Farm, that's a £24 million profit. So there's a lot of big money involved. So we have to come with all of the arguments against that. shovel ready. Obviously, my view is there's lots of things in life more important than money. So, right, thank you, Peter. Ian, now would you just like to talk about the sustainability argument, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Hi everyone. Slightly different argument now around sustainability. The reason I'm talking about this is that the National Planning Policy Framework, the NPPF that Paul mentioned earlier, this is a document that allows Greenbelt land to be taken, to be built on, has some restrictions as to when that can be done. One of them is section 110, which says that significant development should be focused on locations which are or can be made sustainable through limiting the need to travel and offering a genuine choice of transport modes. And section 115 that says in assessing sites it should be assured that sustainable transport modes are prioritised and that any significant impacts from the development on the transport network can be cost effectively mitigated. Now, of course, both the developers are saying that their sites are sustainable, but we've been looking at some of the representations that they've been putting forward, mainly in response to the previous stage of the consultation. And I think we can pick quite a few holes in that. So I'm going to start looking at Tower Farm first of all. And this is owned by a developer called Parker Strategic Land, who are based in Leicester. And they've put quite a few documents together. One of them is their sort of main paper, which says the site is well connected in terms of proximity to key destinations in Portishead. Due to its location, it's well placed to extend the existing cycling and footpath facilities. The walking accessibility of the site is deemed good, with the local facilities and employment areas available within reasonable walking distance. The local centre is located within 1 kilometre of the site, Down Road and West Hill. Let's have a look at that, a few of the things they're saying there. Is it close to key destinations within Portishead, and is the walking accessibility good? Well, I wanted to Google Maps to see some of the distances. From Tower Farm, you're looking at 1.3 miles to the precinct, 1.4 to the library, 1.6 to Parish Wharf, and 1.9 to the station, so nearly 2 miles. And what, of course, they've ignored as well is the fact that Tower Farm is at the top of quite a steep hill. And if you've actually walked up Avon Way, you'll know that. It's actually, from all of those sites up to Tower Farm, it's about a 330-foot climb in height. So that's okay for some people, but for many people it isn't, especially anyone who's elderly, or if you've got young children, or if you've got restricted mobility. They've tried to justify it with a document that they've called Transport Sustainability and Access Strategy. This includes lots of walking times that they claim there's the time to walk from Tower Farm to various places in the town. All of these are vastly underestimated, even if you're walking downhill, but even more underestimated if you're going uphill, which again they've completely overlooked. Are the local facilities and employment areas within a reasonable walking distance? Well, yes, there's some shops and businesses, as we know, at West Hill and the Triangle, but not a huge amount. I think the area is officially classified as a tertiary site, which I don't think is really enough to justify calling it sustainable. Also in their sustainability and access strategy, another quote from that, it says, the proposed development of at least 400 dwellings will not result in severe residual impact on the operation of Down Road and the Downs. Yeah, absolutely. What they've done to try and justify this is basically got the consultants to plug some figures into a modelling programme and come up with that conclusion. But if you think about it, if you talk about 400 new homes, taking the average car ownership in the southwest of England of 1.37 cars per household, you're talking about an extra 548 cars. They've also overlooked the fact that there's also considerable area congestion in the area, especially at school drop-off and pick-up times. They completely overlooked that. And something else which needs to be factored in is that there's also talk about potentially expanding Highdown School if there's pressure on school places. At the moment, as I understand it, there isn't too much pressure on primary school places, but I think there would be if they built the 1,000 homes in Portishead that they're talking about. So that's going to mean children, I think, not just coming from the new development, but from coming potentially from all over the town, up and down to the area. And that's going to have knock-on effects, not just on Down Road in the Downs, it's going to impact Avon Way, Coombe Road, High Street, Cab Stand, Wyndham Way, and all over the area. There's some talk in the documents about improvements to the junction with Down Road. It doesn't say anything about what those would be, and it's hard to know what you could do to improve the junction, to prevent any problems there. And another quote is, the provision of a rail station connecting Portishead and Bristol within cycling distance of the site will be extremely beneficial to future residents. Again, I'm not sure how many people will be able to cycle up and down, well, maybe down, but not up the hill. But it's okay because they've got a solution to this, which is that everyone could get an e-bike. You could, of course, catch a bus to the station or anywhere else in the town, but thinking about buses, the X5 no longer comes to the top end of Portishead. The X10 only runs about half a dozen times a day. The X4 only runs in one direction, so if you get it, you've got a 20-minute trip around Portishead to get to the town centre. And you're also looking at two fares if you're catching the bus to go and catch the train, or the X4 to then join up with the X5. There is talk in North Somerset's plan of contribution to bus services, but again, what realistically is that going to achieve? And the developer also makes some vague mention of a shuttle bus in their plans as well, but that sounds like exactly the kind of thing that gets put in vision documents that never sees the light of day. And the only other mitigation in North Somerset's plan around this is what they call active travel connections to Downs, St Mary's Road and Wetlands Lane. But basically what they're talking about there is footpaths, which they need, I think, permission from other landowners to do anything with, and also doesn't go around the fact that it's very hilly. Interestingly, one of the other housing developers has picked up on all of these points. Obviously they've got vested interest, they want their sites to be picked rather than this one, but I think they've actually summed it up quite well. This is Persimmon, who responded to the last consultation by saying that the site would lead to significant vehicular traffic flows through the centre of Portishead, then to rise up to the site. Such vehicle movements are unnecessary and inconvenient. Land at Tower Farm should therefore be reconsidered in terms of its suitability to development. And that sums it up quite well. So moving on to the Blackrock site, now this one is being pushed by a developer called Bloor Homes, and the issues are very similar, to be honest. At least it is flat if you're walking from there into the high street, but again, it's not in the centre of town. It's quite a walk, and there's very little nearby to compensate for that. Again, looking at Google Maps, you're looking at a 28-minute walk into the precinct from there, 29 to the nearest supermarket, 35 minutes to Parish Wharf, or 38 to the station when it's built. The developer focuses quite a bit on the proximity of bus stops in their supporting evidence, but again, from there, you're only looking at one bus. It's only the X5 that runs past there. It's a 27-minute walk if you wanted to walk to the nearest X4 bus stop, or again, you could take two buses and pay two fares. The last bus on the X5 route towards Portishead from there on a weekday runs at about 7:35, and going the other direction is about 8:10. On Saturdays, that's even earlier, and there's no service on Sundays or bank holidays at all. There is a mention in North Somerset's plan of making the developer pay some bus stop contributions. It doesn't say what that will do, and also no improvements to services are mentioned. The North Somerset plan also talks about connections required through the site to the adjacent footway and cycle network, along with a contribution to the section of the Gordano Greenway. Gordano Greenway is something that North Somerset are thinking about, which would be a cycle and footpath away from the road to link Portishead to Clevedon. But there's obviously going to be issues with land ownership. That would have to run through land owned by lots of different people. Also, no idea how that's going to be funded. North Somerset quite famously haven't got much money at the moment, so that probably seems unlikely to happen. The developers picked up on that as well, and they've said in their plans that the cycle/footway must also connect to the new rail link into Bristol. But I don't know how that's going to happen. I'm not sure where you could run a cycle path or a new footpath through the centre of Portishead from one side to the other. So to sum up then, although the boundaries of these sites would be within the boundaries of Portishead, that doesn't mean that they're going to be sustainable development sites as the developers are claiming. And we think there are other locations, both within Portishead and elsewhere in North Somerset, which are much more sustainable. We talked about, Paul mentioned Castlewood just now. Again, that's relatively short, about 15-minute walk into the centre of Clevedon. It's got bus stops right outside with direct routes to Portishead, Bristol, Nailsea, Weston and Yatton without having to change anywhere. And we think those are the kind of sites that are genuinely sustainable and are brownfield sites. And those are the ones that should be developed. So we think that they are in breach of the NPPF sections 110 and 115. And that's something that is going to be made clear in the Portishead Town Council response to the consultation, and if there's also things you might want to talk about yourselves in your responses as well.
Right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Right, thank you very much, Ian. Bob, do you want to say a few words?
Hi, for those who don't know me, I live at 1 The Deans, just opposite the main entrance for this abortion. My approach is slightly different because although I totally support the independents, I totally support Portishead Town Council, I certainly don't support North Somerset. I don't think they've ever been proven to be our friends, and I think we're going to have a major fight because I think this will go ahead, and that worries me. It will certainly wreck my life because I'll only be able to get out at night, I think, at my house. The real problem I have with it is the whole way they've gone about it. This whole started in about 2022. They started doing some measurements on the road to make sure that it was okay for doubling or over doubling the number of houses that were coming off the downs in Down Road. They did that illegally, ironically, and I pointed that out to them and they went away again, but clearly it got into the plan, and that's why they think it won't have any effect on the traffic. Well, it won't, because it's already stopped. Anybody who lives in the Downs and the Deans knows you can't get out any time at school time, and it's getting worse. There's more car parks, or cars parking on the Downs all day. Some of them are teachers, they've got to park somewhere, they've got a job to do, but it's getting worse. We've already tried to get North Somerset Council to do something about that, and we were informed it's at the bottom of a very long list. So I don't think North Somerset can actually help in this way with us. I don't think they intend to. I think they're trying to put some numbers together to placate a government, and the whole thing really is basically totally undemocratic. If they do go ahead, I think there's so many questions. Just quick questions that I've thought about myself, you know. We now know who the developer might be, although it wouldn't be the first time a developer has sold it on to yet another developer, if the circumstances are suitable. How many actual houses will it be, or is it going to be high-rise? What is it going to be? Who knows? The plans that they've done are a bit of a joke, really, because if anybody does know, well, a number of you live there, I know. If you know that road, having a turn-in off of the Down Road is just crazy, and it's just not going to work. How are they going to build the houses? They're going to be modern houses. They're going to be sustainable houses. All these things we never find out until they put the planning permission in, and we really need to have some effect. If they're going to build it, we need to have some effect. I'd like to have a veto. I'd like to think that democracy actually happens, but I don't think it does with this government, and I don't think it does with North Somerset, I'm afraid. So my view is we're going to have a fight on our hands. I think we can win a fight. You can always win a fight if there's enough people that are prepared to fight. I think it's great that they're using the processes and all those things, but I just get a horrible feeling that money will count and they'll go ahead with some level of planning or some level of building in that area that will wreck the lives for the rest of us. Thank you.
sort of conclude this session, the main arguments, as Bob says, from a process point of view, is that we believe that North Somerset, the local plan, has failed to consider all the brown and greenfield sites, and therefore there are no exceptional reasons for taking this land out of the greenbelt, especially when this land was particularly put into the greenbelt as a special case in the 1980s and 90s, as Peter told us. It will obviously create irrevocable ecological damage, and Chris could talk to you for another three days probably on that. It will still be very interesting. But you know, it's a fantastic special site. The Gordano Valley itself is also a special site for the environment, for nature, and for people, as Chris said. And we believe that they've chosen sites that are not sustainable. So all the argument is about making sure that the inspector and North Somerset realise that these are special places and people need somewhere to live and breathe. That's the one part. So we're now going to move into a Q&A session, and we have a roving mic, and here's a lady walking down the river, and Amy, who's in green. No, that works. So, okay, all right. I think it's on, yeah.
Hello.
So if people would like to raise their hands, then we'll take try and field any questions. Go to the back. Yeah, that's good.
Hi. Oh, sorry. I'm a highway engineer, so I'm particularly interested in transport assessments you mentioned. Are those publicly accessible?
Yeah, they are, yeah. So if you go onto the North Somerset website, they have a Regulation 19 consultation. If you Google that, you'll get to it, and there's a lot of backing documents you'll find, yeah.
Okay. And just to mention, the Gordano Greenway you mentioned isn't in the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan.
No.
So that's worth mentioning.
It's kind of pie in the sky Greenway, I think. Anyone else? Gentleman over there, and then up to over that side, so. Yeah.
Can you set along to the end? Quickly,
Thanks. Thanks. You need to clean your glasses, Paul. You call me a gentleman.
Oh, sorry.
Paul, I live in the Deans next to Bob, is it? I think, obviously it's very difficult, and I think it's going to be quite an emotional time in the coming months and years. I think we should try to have a plan A and a plan B, and plan A will be brownfield, definitely it shouldn't be built there, but I think, Bob's hinted at, despite what we do, it's just possible that they'll go ahead with some building there, so we need to have a plan B as well.
Yeah.
To make that as sustainable as it could be. I actually wrote to Parkers 3 weeks ago saying, well, you say you're going to improve the junction of the Downs and Down Road. Can you say what that means, please? No reply. I also asked them how many social housing units there would be. That's all plan B. I think, and I think we should focus on plan A, but I think simultaneously it'd be good if the town council and others are looking at plan B. What's it mean? There's someone who's a teacher at Gordano who lives on Down Road who said to me today that if it does go ahead, they need to make sure there's a proper path for kids to walk down to get to Gordano. They don't need to be battling an extra 500-600 cars in the morning when they're trying to get to school. So I think there are lots of issues that need to be teased out. Part of the reality is, I wouldn't be living in Portishead if it weren't for the fact that there have been a large number of extra homes built in Portishead. And part of the reality as well is that, of course, there are lots of people who need homes. And we know it's really difficult, the cost of housing. And the cost of rents. But there are lots of people, families in this, there are people on the Deans who've got children who are struggling to find anywhere to live. So I think we need to try and find a way of balancing all these different arguments. But for me, it's plan A and plan B. But I also want to thank the Town Council for organising the meeting tonight and for making sure that people do have a chance of voicing their concerns or their aspirations, and thank the guest speakers as well.
Thank you for that. I mean, you obviously made a very important point. We know obviously there are a lot of people in Port Teddy that need somewhere to live, young people, but we also know there's quite a lot of old people who need somewhere to live as well. We bumped into a couple who have been in a pensionable age, who've been living in a camper van in Aldi for the last 2 months because their landlord evicted them, for no fault. So, there is a serious problem in terms of housing, and what people really do need is truly affordable housing. So, yes, there is obviously a lot of balance. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm Adrian Jones. I live on Tower Road. Has there been any consultation or comments from Avon and Somerset Police?
Not that we've seen, no.
Should there be?
I don't know.
I mean, their land borders at least a quarter of the Tower of the Downs.
Yeah, it's a good point. We'll pick that one up. We haven't seen anything, but yes, as you say, they are adjacent. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so I've been told they will be consulted anyway as a statutory consultee as part of the planning process, so yes, it will happen.
Do we need to wait for them?
Not necessarily, no, we should give them a hope.
Glad to hear they've been consulted. I just wanted to follow up on that question, thank you. One of the things bothering me is the number of housing units that will be reliable on one single access road. And in my background, I had quite an interest in critical incident management and advising people on that. And I wondered if any of the emergency services have been consulted about the viability or otherwise of emergency evacuations from what would effectively be an enormous cul-de-sac.
That'll come later in the process as well.
Sure, the developers, if you read through the document, the developers will have put forward their answer. Whether you believe it or not is a totally different matter, but they will have ticked all the boxes.
Or the emergency department,
Yeah.
department itself.
Thanks. I'm Ben Sol, live actually not far from Mr. Blurt, just round the corner. So the question I had is, in the original consultation when we put in, I think it was number 4 on the list was sites of special scientific interest and other sort of similar areas. So, and there were 3 other categories above that. So, have they looked at all the other categories before coming to this site, which would, from what I remember, was bottom of the list? And how far down the list of sites to be built on will this come? Will it be built on quite early, or will they leave it and it'll be one of the last resorts?
We've got the executive member from North Somerset here as well, but
What happened as a background is the council were quite happy to allocate the sites for roughly 15,000 houses. This was roughly the 900 a year that have been built, and none of that required the green belt at all. As soon as the decree came out that you've got to find this extra 8,000 or 8,500, the council issued what is called a call for sites. And that is where they just publish anybody who's got a site they're prepared to put it in. And this caused developers to run around all over the place. As a trustee for the Flower Show field, I was asked would I put the Flower Show field in. So that's how it goes. And when they put in their comments to council, they have to state, in their view, how quickly it can be developed. Because the other problem the council have got is some of the brownfield sites they want to bring forward, and some of the big green belt allocations they're making around Long Ashton and Dundry area will take more than 5 years to get going. And what developers are doing in this district, and they're doing it a lot, is slowing down development so that their greenfield sites can be put to an inspector. And the crude logistics is, if the district council can't convince an inspector it's got a 5-year supply of available land, the local plan goes out the window, and the developer is approved. Government have approved 150 odd houses on the outskirts of Yatton in a floodplain in the last year because of this. So it's vital the council get a plan adopted. I just don't want this one adopted. But it will be, all these sites that are put in have assured the council they're shovel ready and they can develop them in the next 5 years.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cameron Turson. I'm one of the 64 North Somerset councillors representing Portishead East. I just wanted to sort of commend Bob, who got up and spoke about the actions that we need to take if there isn't any success with the actual work with the plan. I share Bob's view that I think it's going to be a really tough fight. I commend the council for this, but I work nationally in housing, and I met the housing minister who stood with a big placard saying, "Build, baby, build," because the priority of this government is an obsession to build housing regardless of community impact, which I think is wrong. So what I'd like to know from the town council is, will they work with people like Bob on the plan B if this really commendable plan that you put together to challenge will happen? If it doesn't happen, if it's not successful, will you work on a plan B to make life as awkward as possible for any developers that threaten this town? I'm prepared to do that. I'm a big person, I don't mind standing in front of a bulldozer and getting arrested if I have to. But will we have a plan B if it's not successful? That's what I'd like to ask, and will the town council back out?
Absolutely, yeah. I think
I'll chain myself to the bulldozer.
Right, I think Dennis answered the question, but yes, we will be doing that. But obviously, plan A is to challenge, through the process. But obviously, we need to be able to fight as well, because people, the developers, everyone does notice that. So it's worth doing it. So we don't want to give up.
Rev Anne Owen. I've lived in Portishead since 1978. I've seen a lot of changes, many of them for the better, but not all of them. My huge concern for the well-being of the town of Portishead is people's well-being. The traffic jams in the high street and getting around. You've got the school runs, you've got people accessing health centres, the high street, so many different places. And what concerns me most is already people who are ill, infirm, old, young, cannot access the doctor's surgeries easily. Harbourside, all the traffic problems on the road, and you're going to have the new train line, the development of the car park, the station, the reworking of the road systems. What is the impact of all this housing on things that are essential? Because it's going to create more mental health illness in the town with the stress and without the availability of all these green spaces. I believe Portishead is saturated to the detriment of human health and wildlife, which I love.
Dave Patterson, we live on the Downs. My response to the initial consultation objected on 3 points. There was environment and access, which all been covered this evening. There's a third point, which I've heard raised anecdotally by a few other people, around the impact of surface water runoff and flooding lower down in the town. Is that third point a genuine argument? Has the council looked at that at all? Because it seems like quite a problem.
it is a concern, but it's one of those things that can be mitigated by the developer, because they'll end up building a big drain underneath the fields and drain it off, so it will cost them money, but it's quite easily mitigated. So therefore, it's not a particularly strong argument in terms of trying to get it removed as a site. But obviously, if it comes through as a planning application, you force them to do the work, so they still have the drainage properly. So it's more of one of those, if that makes sense.
All right, that's useful to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, I hope you can all hear me at the back because I have a pretty strong voice, as my husband tells me frequently. I've lived in Portishead for over 30 years and I am here tonight to register my strong objection to the proposed development of Weston Bigwood and the area of Black Rock. As a resident, I'm deeply concerned about the serious consequences this development will have for our local community and infrastructure. As our speakers have previously stated, Weston Bigwood is one of the most outstanding areas of natural beauty going back to the Jurassic Age. The proposed housing development would inevitably lead to habitat destruction, increased noise and light pollution, all of which threaten the delicate ecological balance of the area. Once these habitats are damaged, they cannot easily be restored. In addition to this environmental harm, this development would also place further strain on our overburdened infrastructure. Roads in and out of Portishead are frequently congested, particularly during peak hours. Healthcare services and public service amenities are already stretched to capacity. Adding more housing to this sensitive area would exacerbate these pressures. The character of this change to our town cannot be underestimated. We have down to one bank, and when I first moved here we had several banks and several post offices. We're now down to one of each. I'm concerned that the urban conurbation of this area is just the first step in a long-term plan to concrete over greenbelt areas. Unless we fight it, we need to stand up to these people. The building developers are based in Leicester. I've read their reports, and one of them was you could use e-transport or bikes or scooters to commute to the station. The station is 2.5 miles away, and they proposed commuters could use this, but apparently there are 2 train carriages and 1 train per hour, so I don't see that as a big selling point. But I urge every single one of you to take a stand against this development. And I'd also like to thank you, the Town Council, and everybody here for turning up tonight. Thank you.
Hi, Paul Churchill. I was a Town Councillor for a while, but Northwestern, so those I've noticed there are quite a few Northwesterners in here this evening, so great to see you. A couple of things. Somebody mentioned about the saturation, and I think Portishead has definitely reached that point. You know, there's a huge amount of development around the marina and that, and don't be wrong, it's fantastic facilities, but we are now saturated. Traffic problems continually. Yes, we've got a train coming, but that's not going to happen in the next couple of weeks. Yes, they did some work on the Portbury 100, which made things better, but as I understand it, and I'm against any development, any further development in Portishead for some period, but I understand that, you know, we're probably not going to win that battle, and there's going to be some. My worry is the extra traffic that is going to be using the Portbury 100, going out onto the motorway roundabout, which I believe can't be developed anymore. I believe the motorway roundabout is now at, you know, what they can do with it. And then when you add the big development over at Pill and Eastern Gordano coming in from the other side, we're going to go back to those old days where we spend hours and hours stuck in traffic.
Thank you, Ian. I think highways in England have got some funds at the roundabout, but they going to cost £60 million and they've got any money, so it's not going to happen. The gentleman at the front of the moment.
Hi, my name's Rob. I'm a resident of Pill. where there's 1,100 homes that are planned to be built on greenbelt land. There's very little consideration for amenities. There's no shops, there's no increase in the infrastructure. And there's a petition in Peel that's got around 1,800 signatures now, which is nearly half of the population of Peel, which is around 4,500. So there's a lot of objection to the proposal, but it's very difficult to kind of get a coordinated approach to objecting to it, because it's quite an elderly population. A lot of people don't have the internet, and there's no really reliable way of contacting everyone and sort of coming up with a cohesive proposal. But I used to work for a couple of the major developers, Bellway Homes and Redrow, so I've got a lot of background in the industry, and I'm proposing to work with the people who put the petition together to come up with a proposal that can the whole community can get behind. So to include like new shops, new facilities, whether that's schools, leisure facilities, and so on. Because the developments that I've looked at before, if you put any homes in, it doesn't matter whether it's on a brownfield site, which is perfect for development. You can't just consider what is being built, you need to consider the infrastructure, the traffic, so on. Everything needs to kind of be thought about in one big thing. So I guess it comes back to the idea of a plan B. But if there wanted to be some joined up thinking with Peel and sort of our petition, then yeah, I'd be very happy to speak with people.
Yeah, well, hey, thank you for coming along and making yourself known. We're delighted to join forces with you. So just want to come up with the end and we can exchange emails and stuff like that. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Nigel Gorringe from the Downs. Years ago I met Dr. Fox, a previous MP, and he called Portishead the largest town at the end of a cul-de-sac. And we're now proposing to make it an even bigger town, and the cul-de-sac is still there. But I'd like to speak on the ecological side, particularly about Weston Bigwood, which is a facility that we all enjoy. But I fear if they do go ahead and build 400 houses, it'll just become a playground for the kids, in which case it will soon be damaged beyond repair. The builders, is it Leicester they come from?
Yeah, one's from Leicester.
Yeah, one's from Leicester. I've read their documentation, and they're proposing a 50-metre margin between the wood and the first development. Do we consider that sufficient?
No.
Far from it.
I don't know any wildlife that likes to walk down a 50 metre wide path.
No. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, my name's Jonathan Mark. I've lived in Portishead for nearly 50 years now, and I'm also represent an organisation called Wild Portishead. Going back 8 years ago, I did talk to the town council at one of the meetings, and I offered the suggestion that there should be no more development in Portishead until infrastructure is improved. Got a bit of a lukewarm reception at the time, it's got to be said, but since then, obviously, we've had, fingers crossed, the good news that the railway is coming back. But, don't spoil the punchline. But the railway, quite frankly, it's going to offset development over the last 30 years. It's not an instant cure-all for what the problems we're having now. That's us having catch-up to all that development over the last 30 years. Thank you. I've got one question to ask, and I would ask our MP about this, is building more houses in Portishead actually going to solve anything? Really, is it going to solve the housing crisis that we have in this country? And we do have a housing crisis. That housing crisis has largely been precipitated through the terminal loss of so much council housing back in the 1980s. All disappeared into the hands of private developers. That's it, it's gone. We have a critical lack of social housing in this country. People can't afford to live in places. If people can't afford to live in places, they can't afford to invest in their communities and actually contribute to the local economy. So I would say to our MP to look into the viability and sustainability of our housing market as it exists at the moment, because it's clearly broken. And I don't think building more houses and offering up land and doing what we're doing at the moment, I don't think that's going to solve anything, because all that's going to happen is those houses will go into the black hole, and it will be, oh, you've got to build more houses. And it's, you know, we've got to look at why are houses so expensive in this country? Why do people have problems getting onto the property ladder? Why are we so obsessed with the property ladder? They don't do this in Europe. They look at us and think we're odd because we've got this fetish about home ownership. They don't do that in Europe. Anyway, I'm representing an organisation called Wild Portishead. One of our bones of contention is Downside. Now, anybody here from Downside in Portishead, just off Avon Way? Nobody, unbelievable. Oh, gentlemen there, right. 18 months to nearly 2 years ago, North Somerset Council had the wisdom to take Slade Road Field off of Downside, off of its development list, because they failed over the decades to interest anybody in developing it, because you can't develop it. Downside is the only access point to the field, and anybody here from Downside knows Downside is barely 2 cars width. So if anybody wants to develop Slade Road Field, how are they going to do it? North Somerset Council offered the fields to the community, and they've taken it away. They backtracked and they put it back onto the development list without anybody having the chance to put forward ideas or suggestions or what to do with it. But, as I say, we come back to that key point is it's going to be the loss of a crucial green space in Portishead. It borders land owned by Portishead Town Council, which is the fabulous green corridor that runs from West Hill down to the other end of Slade Road. And if you've not walked it, it's brilliant. That's where the fabulous play area is as well. Kudos to Portishead Town Council for the new play area. But yeah, so that how are you going to build next to that with Downside being your only access point? There's a reason why it wasn't developed in the last 10, 20, 30 years. It's because it's impossible unless you subject the people to Downside to a lot of misery. So I would say to North Somerset Council, it's a dead loss. Give it back to Portishead Town Council, give it back to the people of Portishead. Let us do something constructive with it, and let us do something with it to put something back into nature. Because we are one of the, is this right, Chris? One of the most nature depleted. We are the most nature depleted country
in Europe.
We can't afford to keep losing more and more green spaces, because there's no point in us watching Spring Watch and going, oh, isn't it great? And then going outside and we're losing all our, we're losing crucial green space. So, Slade Road Field, I would add to the list and say, that it's just not going to work. And as you say, more development is going to be more strain on our schools, more strain on our health centre. Saturation was one of the words, I think it was, used the term saturation. We're saturated. We are a town sinking under development at the moment, and I think enough is enough, and I think what is being proposed is utterly unsustainable, it's utterly unsupportable. I don't think it's good for wildlife, I don't think it's good for us as human beings, and I just think the property market in this country is broken and we need to...
Bob. Hello everybody. I'm sure a lot of people know who I am, see my photographs all over post-it pages and postbox. And we have a nice little Bambi here that was born incidentally in the spring of this year beyond the 15-metre buffer zone that they're proposing. So how long is 15 metres? Anyone got an idea? So it's about the size of a small swimming pool. You know that little one that you used to do at junior and you used to go, oh yeah, oh I've managed to do a whole length. That's how small it is, which is basically smaller than this room. And that's my concern. So to give you an idea, I'm from North Western, and what a view it's got. Gordonian Valley, brilliant, fantastic. Affordable homes, not a chance. Okay, £500,000, £1 million homes, more than likely. Everyone's nodding their head because everyone knows where I'm coming from. But the 15-metre buffer zone, and I've mentioned it on social media already, that's what concerns me. Now they say between 15 and 50. So what's the chances of 50-metre buffer zone down at North Western? Not a chance. So it's going to be 15. But let's go 2 years ahead. So contrary to my friend and colleague over there that will say brambles are brilliantly a good thing. So these houses were built, and the shadow of those houses, so anyone that lives in North Western knows that the sun rises onto those fields and drops behind when it goes down, yeah? So it drops behind the woods. So that sun will rise, which means those houses will then shadow the woods, which means the woods will then struggle to grow, which also means 50 metres is not a lot, which means the ground that those lovely deer, my little Bambi, might be able to get through is going to start building brambles and nettles and things like that, which means it will stop them from moving, which means they're cut off from moving from one side to the other side of Porter's Head. That's my concern. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening all, my name is Jeff Hardman, I live behind Highdown School. For those who don't live on top of the hill, the High Street is 27 feet above sea level, and when you get to Highdown it's 364 feet above sea level. So when the man from Leicester says it's a gentle stroll, yes, lovely. My concern on Tower Farm is this. The developer will build a house for about £150,000, whether it's here, or Western, or Nailsea. But to get more money over here, to get bigger profits because we're more expensive. So the housing developers win, and North Somerset Council win, because we pay more in council tax. Hence, North Somerset will probably approve this. My question is, on Tower Farm, where is the infrastructure? 2, will it be 400 houses, or will it be 500-600? I'll give you an example of the marina. Originally planned for 1,300 houses. Then they changed it to 1,500, and the councillors rolled on their backs and had their belly scratched. And then they increased it to 1,650 houses. So now by the marina, it looks like a concrete jungle. Now, that's my concern. You mentioned Wyndham Way. Now, Wyndham Way is probably with 800 houses. Are 400 of these still on Old Mill Lane, where they're going to plan to demolish all the businesses on that road and build 400 houses? Phase 2 of the original design was to scrap what is now B&M and the gym and build phase 2 houses. And is phase 3 next to the Premier Inn, which is designated for industrial use. Those are my concerns. Now, Councillor Burden, I believe that between 2000 and 2025, Portishead had roughly really 5,000 houses built.
I can tell you, Jeff, I think from 2001 the population was 9,000 and it's now 27,000. So it's
Right, so my question is...
tripled in 25 years now.
Right, so my question is to the North District councillors, how many houses have been built in Clevedon? How many houses have been built in Backwell? In Blackton? In Cleve? How many? Nowhere near these volumes. But everybody wants to stifle Portishead because it's expensive and the council, North Somerset Council, gets more money from Portishead than anywhere else, and we get very little return. Thank you.
Okay. Can people hear me on that? Right. First, don't disagree with you at all. Please don't take me as an apologist for North Somerset Council. I happen to be one of the opposition members on the council, not the ruling group. But the problem the council has is the government is insisting on this level of development. It isn't the council. I walked Amanika right around the Blackrock Villas. She doesn't want to do this type of development. The trouble is, if North Somerset Council doesn't come forward with sites to satisfy the government, and it is a pure government issue, if North Somerset doesn't, a planning inspector will. And I think we've got to be careful here on trying to split the other villages. Because when you look at the plan, the amount of green belt development, Portishead's getting off very lightly. I think we've got to be really careful to do the coherent argument that we have something special in Portishead. Clevedon would take more development, but it happens to be in a floodplain, unless it moves into the valley on the green belt. But when you think of who ever thought of putting thousands of extra houses in Pill? It just didn't occur to anybody. And 4 years ago, it didn't occur to anybody. It is purely the government have now decreed, as Caritas said, build, baby, build. And we've got to find some way of doing it, which is why I urge you, please, yes, pick up all the sustainability and the other arguments you possibly can, but try and be really focused around the special case we have, and I believe that is the Triple SI of the Western Bigwood. And I think we can win that argument if we're focused on it.
Thank you, Peter. I agree with you 100%. Absolutely, it's what we need to do. Okay. Yeah. Chris. Yeah. Well, I'm going to try and get rid of this
Hey, not that close. Can I just say that I keep hearing the word government being mentioned? Can I just ask, as I know he's around a lot, is our MP in the room? No, he's not. So why don't we, whilst we're actually writing to North Somerset Council, why don't we all from this room bombard our MP?
Absolutely, we should be doing that, yes, so please do.
We've already contacted the MP.
Yeah.
He says he cannot take any part in local decisions.
Yeah,
So
well,
he's wiped his hands on it.
He does with drainage.
He does. That's a pretty poor response. I would still bombard him with your comments. I think we all live in the real world, so we, it is not his role to approve the local plan. Okay, that's the North Somerset County. But clearly, he is a member of the ruling party. I'm sure. I'm sure he knows the housing minister, who I think is Steve Reed, I think he's called these days. So you need to bombard him. You need to provide the arguments, and obviously we'll be trying to go and see him as well. So he has. I've spoken to him about this. He's not the decision maker. He calls it. Obviously, he has soft power, as he called it when I spoke to him. Clearly he has some influence, because he's bloody MP in it, that's what he's supposed to do.
He'd be much better as a pharmacist.
Hi, so I'm James, I'm a North Western resident. I did actually see the local MP, and I talked about proposals on the builds, and he said, well, where else would we build? And I said, well, actually, what about the Old Mill Road, you know, about my Sainsbury's? Be perfect for flats, new homes. And he said something I hadn't heard before, which was that he envisioned it to be a defence sector, where Portishead defence companies could be around nearby the train station. I'd never heard that suggestion at all. And I just wondered if the town council had heard that. I hadn't.
Yes, we have spoken to him about a similar sort of thing. So down the Old Mills Road area, I mean, although there's clearly a lot of businesses there today, there's about 100 jobs, but there is a lot of land. So if you did a mixed development of housing with commercial property, like they do in Europe, where you know they build flats, but they have a commercial, industrial underneath. So I guess his view is that with the railway coming, obviously with the railway it can bring people into Portishead as well as from the outside. So small companies might well want to set up in Portishead. I think he calls it the Portishead Railway Quarter. So I know he's been trying to get people interested. So it would be in the long term, in my view, a good thing, because it would bring businesses into Portishead, so it would provide jobs for people.
Sorry, just one point out to that. He said that it couldn't be both, actually, and also I just wanted to just know what the best stage, what should we do next, in your opinion, the best next thing for everyone to do?
Sorry, I missed the first point. Can you say
he said actually it couldn't be both. So I said, well, could they build houses as well? He said, it's one or the other, but that's interesting you said that. And just my last question would be, what's the best thing we can all do next to sort this?
Okay, well, yeah, that's a good question. We can do that now. It's been interesting. I'll come back to that. Is there any? We'll take a couple more questions and then we'll go on to the next steps. So we've got 3 people down the front here. So yeah, actually do those, and then there's another gentleman there. That's 4. And Karen's side. Right, well, that's it. Then after that, we're going to run out of time. Okay, so we've got 5 more questions or comments. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Sue Haston, and what I really want, and want you all to really understand, is that this is not a meeting alone. All over the country, in virtually every little town, there is a similar meeting taking place, because they've all got the same problems, they've all got the same direction from the centre. But I would say to you this, there's been some very good ideas that have come forward tonight, and there's been an awful lot of criticism and a lot of quite acute anger. And at the end of the meeting, those are the sorts of things that evaporate very quickly. I want the feeling that a meeting this size, and with that much interest, actually progresses and goes forward, and it does produce something that is of use for the town council to do. And the first thing I'd like to say is, like the lady up there talked about, the use of the railway. We've only just got this railway coming. Is it right at the bottom of the town, right on the edge of the town as it is at the moment? But who do you think is going to pay for that railway? It is the development that is going to be taking place in this area. That's how much railways and a lot of infrastructure is obtained. It's obtained off of development. So you get your development and then you get your progress after the event. What I think you could get from a meeting like this tonight is actually to identify amongst the population of Portishead people who have expertise in any one individual area. When councils have to make presentations, they really need to know the facts. They need to have people that they can rely upon to collect information. Now, I know the town council has collected a huge amount of information on the lakefronts, for example, over a period of time. And I certainly think it is that sort of information and collecting of information that is a tremendous use to a council when it actually comes to presenting a case. So what I would suggest to the meeting and is for people who have an expertise in planning, in building, in commerce, who can contribute something to the future of their town and they use their own expertise. That is of great help, and it doesn't cost anything to the town council or to the people, but it may bring those people who have expertise in to be better citizens of our town. And the last point I want to make is this. It is the infrastructure that is the important thing. If as a town we can more or less direct where we are prepared to see roads and develop whatever development is going to be associated with the railway and focus ourselves on what we know is coming, I think we will be able to progress a lot quicker and with a lot more satisfaction than if we try to compete with other areas which are also being developed. If everybody who has a case, and most places all over North Somerset have a case for not having a particular development in their area. If we concentrate on that, we are in competition with a lot of other people. If we concentrate on our own virtues and the development that we ourselves can sustain, then I think we stand a much better chance of producing something very satisfactory and forward-looking out of a meeting like this. And I would especially like to thank the Town Council. It is good for councillors to put their heads on the block and be approached. And I'd like to thank them all very much for the presentations tonight and for all the work they've put in the past over the development of Portishead, which hasn't been easy for them.
Any Paris, did you want to say something else? Bye.
It's not a question, just a quick point. Someone mentioned about lobbying the MP. Is it also worth if the Town Council could actually put up the contact details for the developers that are interested in Portishead and give the public the opportunity to tell them what warm welcome they'd received if they did cross the borders?
Fantastic idea, yeah. Can I have the mic down here? Sorry, right about me.
10,000 steps in.
I'd like to have a little straw poll in a moment. But as was mentioned earlier, the importance of finding an alternative site, brownfield preferably, is I think quite critical because, as Peter says, we have to have our share in some respects. And the brownfield site identified, Wyndham Way and the Station Quarter, I think would be quite ideal. We're talking about a piece of land behind the Sainsbury's filling station. Old Mill Road, as you remember, for those with longer memories, it was railway sidings predominantly, and it was on the edge of Portishead, but now it's not. It's in the heart of Portishead. And in some respects, we're not asking or telling anyone, we don't want businesses there. Of course, as Paul says, it's 80 to 100 people employed there. But they're sheds, large sheds, and they could be utilised, or that land could be utilised in a much more productive way. So it's part of our argument, it's part of the strength of the argument that we need to be proving that there is alternative, as in that site, where a lot more dwellings could be incorporated. Are you in agreement? Yes. So that's a show of hands, predominantly in agreement that it's a good place to be putting more dwellings. I think that's unanimous pretty well, isn't it? Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mike. Right, I'm going to, conscious of time now, so I just wanted to kind of sum up. First, thank you for everyone for coming, for your contributions. The lady said there, we've got a fantastic turnout, we've got great arguments, we've got passion, so we can do this, all right? So I'm not the sort of person to give up, so we can do this, but we've got to be smart, We've got to be forceful as well. In terms of next steps, I would really urge you to write to your MP. We will get the details for the developers, contact them as well. I'm sure there's quite a few members for Avon Wildlife Trust here as well. I would urge you to contact the Avon Wildlife Trust and ask them why they're not visible and what they're going to do. As Peter said, they were very much in the forefront in the late 80s and early 90s, and that's what resulted in Western Bigwood eventually ending up in the hands of Avon Wildlife Trust, for example. So those are things that you can do. Obviously, there is the consultation. We would urge you to put in a response. What we will do, so Amy is our communications officer there in the green back. Wave your arms back. So she runs the Portishead Town Council website and a Facebook page, so we will put up information on there. The video of the meeting will be there. We will put up probably some detailed responses, suggested responses that you're welcome to plagiarise, copy, use, add your own comments to, but as I said, it's quite technical consultation. And I know that the resident kindly sent me an example response that she had done. So she's here tonight. Susan Martin, is she here tonight? Yeah, hi Susan, thank you. Are you okay if we publicise that to everybody? Okay, thank you very much. So she's already filled in the consultation, and so we'll send that out to people who contact us. So it's a good example, because it's much easier to copy someone else's than mine. We'll try and do it all yourself. Okay, so we'll do that. We will also, as town councils, we'll publish a couple of days where we are available in the town council offices, which is the folk hall on the end of the high street. We'll be there over a couple of days. If people would like to come in and they would like some help with filling in the consultation, we're very happy to help you do that. We did this before in the first round. I think it was quite successful, and it meant we got more responses than any other town in North Somerset. So we, again, need to make sure we have more responses, more clever arguments, more smart arguments, more noise, etc. than anyone else. And as Peter said very eloquently, these are special places. We need to focus on Western Bigwood, the Gordano Valley, and how important it is to ourselves as people, as human beings, as well as to the wildlife and to our health. All right, so that's the real focus. Is there anything else that I've forgotten in terms of what we're doing in terms of next time? Okay, it ends on the 12th of December. As a town council, we will be putting our submission in on about the 8th or the 9th, because we, as I mentioned earlier, we have hired a strategic planning consultant who's looking for everything and will provide us hopefully some additional ammunition, if that's the right phrase, probably is, for our response. So we'll be doing ours around official one, but we will put out some drafts. If you give us your contact details, we will let us know your draft. So we will give you our draft responses. Ian has kindly written quite a lot of that for us. Other people have contributed. So we have the pieces of paper there, which Nikki is holding up. You go. So they're on your seat. There may be some outside as well as you go out. Please, if you want to know what's going on in the future, do fill in the contact details form. Obviously, we'll do it in the proper data protection way, and the council will write to you with information and the way you can respond and anything else. So obviously, you can fire in additional questions that you may not have thought of tonight or points you want to make, so we can keep the communication and the campaign going. All right. So, thank you very much again. Thanks for coming, and yeah, thank you very much. So, if you want to talk to anybody, we'll be here at the end, so please come to us.
Oh yeah, cool. Yeah. Car park.